The plane landed. Passengers stood up, stretched their arms, dragged their hand luggage from the overhead compartments. Children cried. A man in a blue agbada laughed on the phone. A woman touched up her lipstick in a compact mirror. Everything was ordinary. Everything was moving. Except Zina. She sat in her seat for a few extra seconds, gripping the armrest. Her heartbeat had not slowed down since takeoff. But she told herself it was just anxiety. Nervous excitement. The kind you feel when your whole life is about to change. When she finally stood and joined the line moving toward the exit, she exhaled slowly and told herself the same thing she had been telling herself for the past 6 hours. You deserve this. You have always deserved this. The doors opened. Everyone else stepped into Heathrow Airport. She stepped into silence. No terminal. No announcements crackling over speakers. No trolleys rattling against tiles. No smell of coffee or duty-free perfume. Just open air. A sky that was the wrong shade of gray. And a man standing a few meters ahead of her, holding a white sign with neat black letters. The name on that sign was not Amara. It was Zina. Her real name. The one she had spent the last 48 hours burying. The one she swore no one at that airport would ever know. She blinked. She looked behind her. The plane was still there, sitting on the tarmac, but every single passenger had vanished. There was no one. No ground crew. No terminal building. Just silence, and that man, and that sign. He looked at her without surprise. Without urgency. As if he had been standing there for years. And in a calm voice, he said, "Zina. We have been expecting you." That was how it began. But to understand how Zina ended up standing in a place that should not exist, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to a small compound in Enugu, where two sisters grew up sleeping in the same bed, eating from the same pot, wearing the same hand-me-down slippers. And hating each other for none of those reasons. Zina was the older one. By 3 years and 2 months. She had always been the sharper one, the louder one, the one their mother called too much, in a tone that was never a compliment. She had ideas that tumbled out of her faster than she could catch them. She was restless in ways the family had no language for. When she was 12, she took apart the neighbor's broken radio and put it back together because she was bored. When she was 15, she started selling chin-chin on the street in front of their compound to save enough money to buy second-hand novels. She had fire. But fire, in the world Zina grew up in, was not always useful. Sometimes it just burned you. Amara was different. Amara was still. Amara was soft in a way that made people want to protect her. She had large, quiet eyes and a way of listening to people that made them feel like the most important person in the room. Where Zina was electric, Amara was warm. And their mother, without meaning to, made her preference obvious in 100 small ways. An extra piece of meat at dinner. A softer reprimand when something went wrong. A longer embrace at night. Zina noticed everything. She catalogued every difference, every slight, every moment she felt unseen. She never said anything. She just kept score. By the time they were adults, both sisters were still in Enugu. Their father had died when Zina was 19. Their mother sold tomatoes and pepper at the Ogbeat market. They lived in the same 2-room flat their parents had rented since before Zina was born. Zina worked at a small printing shop, designing flyers and business cards for traders and small businesses. She was good at it. She was efficient, she was fast, and she barely earned enough to cover her transportation every month. Amara worked as a secretary at a property company. She was pleasant to everyone. She made friends easily. She laughed at the right moments. And then, without any visible effort, at the age of 25, Amara met Emeka. Emeka Okafor was 42 years old, successful, and based in London. He had come back to Nigeria for a burial and ended up at a mutual friend's house where Amara happened to be. He saw her across the room, brought her a drink, and by the end of the evening had asked for her number. Within 6 months, he had visited twice more, met their mother, and proposed. Within 8 months, Amara had a visa. When Amara came home with the visa in a brown envelope and placed it on the table with trembling hands, their mother wept. She held Amara's face and called her God's own child. She said it was answered prayer. She said Amara was going to lift the whole family. Zina sat in the plastic chair by the door and watched all of this. She said congratulations in a voice that came out flatter than she intended. Later that night, when Amara was asleep, Zina sat outside on the veranda in the dark, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of everything she had swallowed. It should have been her. Not because she was better than her sister. She would not even let herself think in those terms. But because she had worked harder, wanted it more, chased it with everything she had and received nothing. Amara had simply existed, and life had delivered itself to her doorstep like a package. Zina sat in the dark for a long time. And when she finally went inside and lay down beside her sleeping sister, something had shifted in her chest. Something had clicked into a new position. She was not exactly sure what it was yet. But it felt like a door. The flight was scheduled for a Friday morning. Emeka had sent a driver to take Amara to the airport. The bags were packed. The travel documents were in a brown envelope in Amara's travel bag. 2 days before the flight, when Amara was at a friend's farewell gathering for her, Zina found the envelope. She told herself she was just looking. She told herself she was just curious. She picked up the passport and turned it over slowly. She opened it to the picture page. Amara looked back at her from the laminated photograph, calm and pleasant as always. Zina stared at the picture for a long time. Then she went to her own documents in the drawer beside the bed and placed them next to Amara's. They were not identical. But they were close enough in some of the details that a person moving quickly through a busy airport, following a crowd, dressed correctly, confident, might not be questioned too hard. Their faces were similar. They had the same mother. The same bone structure. Amara had gained a little weight in the last year, which actually made her look more like Zina now. Zina had told herself she was only comparing. But her hands were already moving. Later, she would not be able to explain it. Not to herself. Not to anyone. What she would say, in the deepest part of her own mind, was that it felt less like a decision and more like a surrendering. Like she had been holding a rope with both hands for years and her fingers had finally given out. She made a plan. A quiet, efficient plan. The kind she was good at. She would dress like Amara usually dressed when traveling, calm and neat. She would take only what she needed. She would send a message from Amara's phone to their mother saying the driver had come early and she was on her way. Then she would switch her own phone off and go. The night before the flight, Amara slept deeply. She had been tired from the farewell party. Zina stood over her in the dark for a long moment. In the narrow light coming from the street outside the window, her sister's face was peaceful. She looked like she always looked in sleep. Unbothered by the world. Zina pressed her lips together. She picked up the brown envelope from the bag, took what she needed, left the rest undisturbed, and lay down. She did not sleep. She lay on her back staring at the ceiling until the street outside began to fill with the sounds of early morning. Then she rose, dressed, and left before 4 a.m. She sent the message from Amara's phone and dropped it on the kitchen table. She stepped out of the compound into the dark street and thought, I was not stealing her life. I was correcting a mistake destiny made. At the airport, everything felt unreal in the way that enormous risks always feel unreal in the middle of executing them. Her pulse was loud in her own ears. But she moved through each checkpoint with the careful calm of someone who had rehearsed it 100 times in her mind. She answered questions directly. She kept her eyes steady. She did not volunteer anything. And it worked. She boarded the plane. She found her seat. She sat down, buckled her seatbelt, and for the first time in 3 days, she breathed. It was only after the plane lifted off the runway and Enugu disappeared beneath the clouds that the first strange thing happened. The flight attendant came down the aisle doing her initial checks. She was a tall woman with very straight posture. When she got to Zina's row, she paused briefly to check something on her tablet. Then she looked at Zina with an expression that was not suspicious exactly but attentive in a way that felt like more than professional courtesy. "Is everything all right, Zina?" she said. Zina's stomach dropped. She recovered quickly. "I am fine, thank you," she said, keeping her voice even. The attendant smiled and moved on. Zina told herself it was a mistake. A slip of the tongue. People made errors. The name on the documents was Amara. The woman had simply misspoken. She leaned back and closed her eyes. 2 rows behind her, a young woman was traveling with a baby. The baby had been quiet since takeoff, which Zina had been quietly grateful for. But sometime in the first hour of the flight, as Zina drifted into a half-sleep, the baby began to cry. A high, thin sound that cut through the cabin. Zina shifted in her seat. The crying continued, and then, in the pause between one sob and the next, Zina heard something that made every hair on her body stand. The baby said her name. Not cried it. Not babbled it. Said it. Clearly and distinctly, in a voice that was too formed, too precise for an infant. Zina. She spun around in her seat. The woman behind her was rocking the baby and looking down at it with a worried expression. The baby had stopped crying and was now simply staring in Zina's direction with large, still eyes. Zina turned back around slowly. She gripped the armrest. She told herself she had imagined it. That the half-sleep had distorted sounds. That guilt was playing tricks. She was good at telling herself things. But the rest of the flight felt different after that. Too quiet in the wrong moments. Too loud in others. When the pilot came over the intercom to announce their descent, his voice had a strange quality to it, like a recording played slightly too slow. The country name he mentioned sounded muffled, indistinct, as if the audio had dropped out at precisely that word. Zina looked at the passenger beside her, a middle-aged man in a gray suit, but he was asleep and did not seem to have noticed anything. She looked at the small screen on the seat in front of her. The flight path showed them descending. The little aircraft icon was approaching land. She could see the lines of coastline, the shape of an island or a peninsula, but no label. No city name. She assumed it was a display issue. It was not a display issue. When the plane landed and the doors opened, everyone else filed out with the automatic ease of people arriving somewhere familiar. Zina followed. But as she stepped through the door and down the stairs, the world outside failed to resolve into what it should have been. There was a tarmac. There was sky. There was a man holding a sign. And there was silence. Heathrow does not sound like silence. Heathrow sounds like 10,000 things happening at once. It smells like diesel and damp and recycled air and bad coffee. It is an assault. It is overwhelming in every sense. This was not that. This was the absence of all of that. A space where the ordinary furniture of an international airport should have been but was not. Just open space and the wrong kind of quiet. The man with the sign was unremarkable in every physical way. Medium height, medium build, dark suit, no expression that you could easily read. He walked toward her with the unhurried gait of someone doing something routine. "Zina," he said. "We have been expecting you." "My name is Amara," she said immediately, automatically. The lie came so fast she almost believed it herself. He looked at her for a moment. Then he glanced at the sign in his hand, at the name printed on it in neat black letters, and looked back at her without changing his expression. "Your documents say Amara," he said. "But that is not what we see here." He turned and began walking, and somehow, without deciding to, she followed him. He led her into a building that appeared as they approached it, as if it had been there all along but she had simply not registered it before. Inside, it was cool and spare. Long corridors with white walls. No noise. Doors on either side at even intervals. She followed him through 2 turns and into a large room with a single chair and a table and, on the wall opposite the chair, a screen. He gestured for her to sit. She sat. "What is this place?" she said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "A place where things become clear," he said. "Where am I?" "You are exactly where your choices brought you," he said. Then he left the room. The door made no sound when it closed. On the screen, images began to play. Not a film. Not a slideshow. More like a mirror, but of events rather than reflections. She watched herself standing over Amara's sleeping body in the dark. She watched her own hands moving through the brown envelope. She watched her own face in the back of the taxi to the airport, jaw tight, eyes fixed ahead, the expression of someone who has decided something and is not allowing themselves to feel it yet. She watched the moment their mother woke up to find Amara's phone on the kitchen table and Amara's bed empty. She watched their mother's face crumple. She watched her call Amara's number over and over, the phone ringing and ringing on the kitchen table. She watched her mother fall onto the floor in the way that bodies fall when the legs are no longer cooperating with the mind. Zina looked away from the screen. "You do not have to look," said a voice. She startled. She had not heard anyone enter. But there was a woman now, sitting in the corner of the room on a chair Zina was certain had not been there before. She was older, simply dressed, with a composed face. Not unkind. Not warm either. Just present. "But it is better if you do," the woman continued. "Who are you?" Zina asked. "I am someone who was in a chair like that once," the woman said. "It was a long time ago." Zina looked at the screen again. It had changed. She was no longer watching herself. She was watching other people. A man in his 50s forging a signature on a land document that transferred property from his younger brother to himself. A woman switching a scholarship application, replacing her friend's name with her own, changing the photograph on the form. A government official redirecting funds meant for a hospital construction into a private account in his wife's maiden name. Different faces, different ages, different crimes. All the same structure. Someone had something that someone else wanted. And someone else decided that want was enough to justify the taking. "They are all here?" Zina asked. "They were all here," the woman said. "Some of them are still here." "What happens here?" "You see what you did," the woman said. "Not just the action. The full shape of it. What it cost. Who it broke. How far it traveled." Zina's throat was very tight. "And then what?" "And then you are given a choice." The screen changed again. This time it was Amara. Present time, it seemed. Amara was at a police station in Enugu, sitting across from an officer, her face red and swollen from crying. She was explaining the situation with the precision of someone who has had to repeat a traumatic thing many times and has gone numb from the repetition. The officer was writing things down. Their mother was seated beside Amara, her hand over her mouth, her eyes closed. Amara kept saying the same thing, in different orders, in different words. That she had done nothing wrong. That she did not understand. That her sister had taken her documents and her visa and her life. That she was supposed to be on that plane. That there was a man waiting for her in London. That she had not been able to reach Emeka. That her phone kept going to voicemail. That she did not know what she had done to deserve this. Zina's chest cracked open. Not dramatically. Not in the way people describe emotional collapse in stories, as though it is loud and spectacular. It cracked open the way old plaster cracks, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. She felt the full weight of it for the first time without the thin insulation of ambition protecting her from the feeling. She had told herself she was correcting a mistake. She had told herself her sister would understand. She had told herself Amara had plenty of goodness in her life and could absorb this one loss. But Amara was not absorbing it. Amara was dissolving in front of a police officer in a plastic chair, and their mother was sitting beside her with her hand over her mouth, and none of the stories Zina had told herself were reducing what she was watching on the screen by even a degree. "I did not think it would feel like this," Zina said, almost to herself. "It always feels like this," the woman in the corner said quietly. "The ones who do not feel it are the ones who stay. Stay here. Indefinitely," the woman said. "They arrive. They watch. They refuse to see themselves in what they watch. They explain it away. They justify. And so they remain. The place resets. The plane lands again. And again. And again." Something about the way she said those last words landed in Zina's chest like cold water. She turned to look at the woman fully. "That happened to you?" Zina asked. "I justified for 2 full cycles," the woman said. "By the 3rd time the plane landed, I was too tired to justify anything. That was the only mercy of it. Exhaustion." Zina turned back to the screen. Amara was now outside the police station, on a step, on her phone. Her face was different now. Not just sad but closed. A new kind of expression. The expression of someone in the process of understanding that the world does not always provide explanations, that sometimes it simply does what it does and you have to decide what you are going to do with the remainder of your life. "What is my choice?" Zina said. "You confess," the woman said. "Fully. Without conditions. Without softening. Not because it fixes anything immediately. But because it is true. Because what you did was real and it deserves to be named. And if I do that?" "You go back," the woman said. "To wherever you need to be to begin repairing it. Not to the destination you stole. Not to the life you tried to take. Back to the beginning of the actual work." Zina was quiet for a long time. On the screen, Amara had stopped crying. She was sitting very still now, looking at nothing in particular. That stillness was somehow harder to watch than the crying. The crying at least had movement. This was different. This was the face of someone learning, in real time, to live inside a betrayal. Zina thought about all the years she had spent telling herself she was owed something. That her sharpness and her hunger and her effort should have yielded more than they had. She thought about her father dying too early and her mother's tired hands and the printing shop and the smell of ink and the 2-room flat and the chair by the door where she had sat watching her sister hold a brown envelope that felt, in that moment, like evidence of something unfair. And then she thought about something smaller. Something she had not thought about in years. A memory from when they were children. She had been sick once, badly sick, a fever that had lasted 3 days. And Amara, who was 7 years old at the time and barely understood what a fever was, had sat beside her the entire first night pressing a wet cloth to her forehead. Every time the cloth dried, Amara got up, ran to the kitchen, wet the cloth again under the tap, wrung it out, and came back. She had done this until she fell asleep sitting up, the cloth still in her hand. Zina had never thanked her for that. Not once. She breathed in slowly. "I confess," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. "I took what was not mine. I told myself I deserved it more and that was a lie I needed to believe so I would not have to feel what I actually felt, which was that I was afraid. Afraid that no matter how hard I tried, nothing would ever come for me the way things seemed to come for her. I was not correcting destiny. I was punishing my sister for something she did not do to me. She never did anything to me. She was just alive and loved and it made me feel invisible and instead of saying that, I stole from her." The room was completely still. The screen went dark. The woman in the corner stood up. "That is enough," she said, simply. The door opened. And then Zina was on a plane. Not the same plane, or perhaps it was, but the atmosphere inside it was different. Normal cabin sounds. A child asking her mother for a snack. The clinking of the drinks trolley. The smell of recycled air and instant noodles. She was in a window seat. Outside, the sky was doing what the sky over the Atlantic does, cycling through grays and blues and the occasional impossible pink at the horizon. She looked at her hands in her lap. The documents on the seat pocket in front of her. She did not look at the name on them. When the plane landed and the doors opened, it was Heathrow. Unmistakably, undeniably Heathrow. The noise and the crowds and the long gleaming corridors and the signs pointing in 12 directions at once. She stood in the arrivals hall for several minutes, people flowing around her, rolling luggage and calling names and pulling children by the hand. A driver was waiting with a sign that said Amara Obi. Zina walked past him. She found an airport phone, called the number she knew by heart, and waited. When her mother answered and Zina said her real name, the silence on the other end of the line was the longest silence she had ever lived through. Then her mother made a sound that was not quite a word. And then Amara was on the phone, and neither of them spoke for almost 10 seconds, and when Amara finally said, "Zina," her voice had the quality of something stripped down to its most basic material. Past anger. Past grief. Into something underneath both of those things. "I am coming home," Zina said. "I need to come home." The flight back was not eventful. It was long and uncomfortable and she spent most of it looking at the clouds below and thinking about what she was going to say and understanding that there were no right words. That this was not a problem that language was going to solve in a single conversation. That what she had done had dimensions that were going to take years to fully map, and that the mapping was not optional. It was the only path. Her mother did not embrace her at the door. That surprised her. She had expected tears, perhaps anger, perhaps both. What she got was her mother standing back from the door with a face that was too tired even for anger. A face that had been through too much in too many hours to perform anything other than itself. Amara was inside, sitting on the bed in their room. The same bed they had shared for their entire childhood. The same narrow mattress and the same window and the same smell of the compound drifting in from outside. Zina sat on her side of the bed without being invited. She did not know how to begin and so she began badly, with silence, and then with an apology that came out halting and imprecise. She kept stopping and starting. She said, "I was wrong and I am sorry and I did not let myself think about what this would do to you," and none of those phrases were sufficient and she knew they were not sufficient even as she said them. Amara listened to everything without interrupting. Her face did not change much during any of it. When Zina finally ran out of words and went quiet, Amara was quiet too for a long time. Then she said, "I know you were suffering. I knew before this. I could feel it. I just did not know what to do with that." Zina did not respond. She could not. "I am not ready to forgive you yet," Amara said. "I need you to understand that. What you did broke things. Between us, between you and Mama, between me and Emeka, because I have to explain this to him, and I do not know how that conversation goes. You broke things that are going to take time to repair, and I do not know how much time or whether all of them can be repaired." "I know," Zina said. "But I also do not want to lose my sister," Amara said. "And those two things are both true at the same time. That is where I am right now." Zina nodded. She felt the burning behind her eyes but she did not cry. She did not feel entitled to cry right now. That was something she understood clearly. They sat beside each other in silence on the old bed in the room where they had grown up, with the compound sounds drifting in through the window and their mother moving quietly somewhere else in the flat. And Zina thought about something she had heard once, somewhere, in another life. That there are two kinds of people who arrive at the edge of a wrong they have committed. Those who explain it until it disappears. And those who stay with it until they can see its full shape. She had spent most of her life being the first kind of person. She was going to have to learn to be the second. She had thought she wanted her sister's life. She had thought that was the hunger she had been carrying for all those years. But sitting in the dim light of their childhood room, with everything broken around her and the real work only beginning, she understood something she could not have understood before. She had not wanted Amara's life. She had wanted to feel like her own life was enough. She had wanted to feel seen. And she had looked for that in the wrong place, reached for it in the wrong way, and caused damage that was going to outlast this conversation. But she was here. On the right ground, under the right sky, in the place that was actually hers. That was the beginning. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something, please like this video, it helps more people find stories like this. Drop a comment and tell us what you think Zina should have done differently. And if you are new here, subscribe to Epic Story Vault. We tell the kinds of stories that do not let you go. The next one is already waiting for you.